shouldn't speculate about the outcome of the election.
We live in a period in which politicians are not very popular. And believe me, you have my sympathy.
So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over.
What do you tell them?
I told him this is my final magic trick. I can hear it. It's live.
Wow. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Punching Left, where I forgot to turn my lighting on. And even worse than me forgetting to turn my lighting on was that clip we just watched. Wow. Mike, do you have any first impressions of this clip of Lil Nas X rapping at Lander Elementary School?
I can't believe that happened in Ohio. I was up in Cleveland. And again, like, it's grade schoolers. It's not even high schoolers, and they're singing along. They know the lyrics. This is embarrassing.
Oh, yeah, and the lyrics, I mean, like it says, riding on my tractor, lean all in my bladder, cheated on my baby, you can go and ask her, my life is a movie, bull riding and boobies. Like, and this is what these little kids are singing. And for those of you who don't know, the lean all in my bladder, lean is like a drug. It's, it is, what is it, methoprosine, codeine, or whatever. It's essentially an opiate that you are, you drink as cough syrup to get you high. So these kids are rapping along with their favorite gay rapper. This is a member of the LGBT, very outspoken about it. We can't play all the clips from his music video that show just how pro-LGBT is, because it would not be safe for our YouTube channel. On his YouTube channel, it's not age restricted or taken down, but on ours, of course, it'd be flagged to high heavens, nor do we even want to show the stuff. But
that's incredible. Like, the videos aren't even age restricted on his own channel, like the nude dancing and everything else.
Yeah, there's nudity, there's female nudity, there's male nudity. Some of it is like really gross. Like, there's a scene where he's like in a prison shower and he blurs you know, the absolute necessity of blurring he does, right? He takes the liberty of doing. But there's like 10 or a dozen like young black guys in these showers totally nude, and then they blur like, you know, the private areas, but it's still just nasty. Like, it's still like, I don't know why it's allowed on YouTube. I don't know. Should we pull up like a clip to show? I don't know if we can even do that on the show, but
yeah, I'm not set up for that right now. But yeah, I've seen him giving Satan a lap dance, and that was enough for me. I'm glad I haven't seen the shower.
That's a totally different music video. The shower one is a different one than that. I mean, there's several different ones. And anyways, without going too much into this is like a very degenerate, gross rapper who is like pushing this LGBT stuff onto the masses. And now you have little kids at elementary schools rapping about this, rapping about like cheating on people and doing drugs and, you know, all this perverted stuff.
Yeah, and this is the same guy that had like the custom Nikes with human blood in them, isn't it?
Yeah, that is him, right?
Yeah, so this guy's a winner.
Yeah, and I mean, the writing was on the wall months before even those stunts. Like, he did the thing with Satan, and he did the thing with, like, human blood in the Nikes and stuff. And that is obviously satanic and wrong. But, I mean, we should have been able to see right through this guy months ago when he was going on Twitter saying how proud he is to be in the LGBT community, and he was already pushing these things. I mean, this is someone who's being marketed as a performer for children, which sounds odd because it's like rap music, and that's not something traditionally associated with kids. But they want to normalize the things that happen in rap music for kids. And you can see just like in the video we just watched where they're rapping about drugs, they're rapping about sex, they're rapping about these terrible topics. And you have little children. We're talking like second graders, third graders, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds singing along to the music like this, which to me, there's two major problems with this. One, how on earth did the school administration get this guy to come? They greenlit this, probably promoted and seeked out having this guy come to their school. So where on earth were the parents in the school to stop this? But second, how is it that all these kids know the lyrics to this song? Like, obviously the kids are listening to this music constantly enough to know all the lyrics of the songs, and yet the parents were none the wiser. Like, the parents don't listen to their kids listening to songs about sex and drugs and things like this. I mean, where are the parents in the school? Where are the parents even in their own households?
Well, yeah, apparently not. Apparently they're not paying attention because, again, like I would think at a minimum there would have been parents like protesting the minute this was brought up to bring this guy in.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, this is the guy that originally came out with like the country rap song with was it like Miley Cyrus's Billy Ray Cyrus? Is that who it was?
It was Billy Ray Cyrus, Miley's dad. That was the song he was singing there.
Believe it or not, I know less about country music than I do about rap, which is probably pretty sad. But
well, now there's a mixture of both of them. Little Nas X, the same way he combines rap music and country, he's now combining rap music about drugs and sex with women with little elementary school age kids. Imagine that, a member of the LGBT going after children to talk about sex and drugs with. Who would have imagined such a thing?
Yeah, that never happens.
Never.
And again, like, this guy's a declared Satanist. And it's okay to bring him into your kid's grade school. I mean, I get it that it's Cleveland, and Cleveland obviously doesn't exactly have high standards, but still.
Yeah. And this is like, I mean, and honestly, I think there'd be a lot of parents in like Chicago or like Detroit or maybe these schools where, like you would say, they're rundown schools, they're bad schools, whatever. Even there, I think there should be parents who would be outraged about this. But here's the thing. If you look up the school where this happened, Lander Elementary School, if you look up any information about this, because we tried to do our research here on the show, all of the reviews of this have just been positive. It's been media praising this. If you go to the YouTube video of this, the original one, that doesn't have the lyrics and stuff, that was all added for the viewer's convenience. Yeah. But you look at the original videos of this, I just saw on their YouTube channel, it had something like 143,000 likes on the video, and it only had 4,000 dislikes. So 140,000 people were like, this video's awesome, yeah, let's go, on YouTube. Only 4,000 people disliked. You go to the comments, universal support. There's not a single negative comment that I could find after going through hundreds, because this has like upwards of 6 million views on YouTube.
That's insane. Like, that's the sheer power of like stardom and programming, where no one will even speak out against it. I bet the few that do are all being mocked and castigated. Like, again, like I saw this on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere where somebody shared it there, but it wasn't exactly in a positive light. I'm a little surprised that they weren't ratioed online, but.
Yeah, because people see absolutely nothing wrong with this, and it obviously is wrong. I mean, I don't know how you could see a room full of elementary school age kids, like we said, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids singing about drugs and sex and things like this and think that's in any way appropriate. I mean, I remember back when parents used to get mad about like the sex ed classes in school, and that is nowhere near as bad, you know, debatably, than as this happening. A singer promoting these ideas, especially the talk about drugs and stuff, normalizing this in elementary school. What happened to like the war on drugs in schools?
Oh, that failed a long time ago, but yeah, like I remember like when I was in grade school, like even when they did have like a dance or an event or something like that, like the music that was played all had to be like pre-screened and had to be clean. Even the topics on the songs were a lot of like pop songs at the time that they wouldn't play at a school dance or event because they weren't appropriate.
Yeah, right. And now you can have live performers come in who are self-proclaimed Satanists, self-proclaimed LGBT members, come in and talk about drugs and sex in your school and have your kids sing along to it. And again, like you look at the comments, like the top comment is, oh, moment of silence for the kid who stayed home sick that day or whatever. And it's like, no, like, thank God that kid was not at school because this is disgusting.
Yeah, I hope his parents pulled him and that was like intentional.
Yeah, I know, right?
At least then somebody in that school has morals and won't grow up to be a complete degenerate loser.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like, I can't believe there are such little, like, there's no outrage with this. And usually when there's anything that happens at a school, I mean, they could change the lunch lady and you'd have at least a few moms who are angry and protesting outside about it. But with this, I've seen zero coverage. And it's like, where is Fox News? Where are the bigger conservative networks? They should be covering this information because it's very important. There must be some parents who are outraged about this, and we should have people flying down to Cleveland. Gee, I'm ready to fly down to Cleveland and start interviewing parents outside the school. I don't even know if that's legal. Can you show up to a school and just start like harassing parents getting out of their car? I would totally do that. Fox, hire me and I'll go out there today and I'll start interviewing parents to see what the heck is going on. Does this happen often? Are the parents okay with this? I can't imagine everyone's on board with this.
And I can't imagine there's any laws actually against that as long as you're not on the school property.
Yeah.
Then again, it's a public building. You have a right to voice your concerns.
Might have to try doing that. But why don't you take us over to our next story here?
Well, we'll go from some really bad news to some really good news for us, just not the employees at Twitter. Obviously, everybody's heard by now Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter's. They're basically just waiting for final approval now. The board accepted the offer. And the news has been so bad, they've had to put up the suicide nets around the building, open up the cry closets, and Twitter's top attorney, and I'm going to mispronounce her name, Vijaya Gad, whatever. The one that was on with like Joe Rogan. And
VG.
Yeah, we'll go with that. with Joe Rogan and Tim Pool and Jack Dorsey a few years ago that just got massacred by Tim Pool during their little debate. I guess they had a big staff meeting about it. She broke down crying. She's not the only one. I'm sure everybody's seen these meltdowns going on.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I would love to see her breakdown in the conference room. I cannot believe that Twitter is going to have free speech now. That was a terrible accent. That she is an Indian woman, which is why I would botch the accent there. But nevertheless, it is funny seeing all these people from Twitter absolutely break down in hysteria and crying over the fact that now we're going to have free speech on social media platforms.
Yeah, and get rid of these algorithms and other things that they've been doing to manipulate things, and it's already having an effect. These are 3 tweets from 3 prominent leftists on the screen that all noticed today they've lost thousands and thousands of followers as these bot armies start exiting before they have a purge.
Yeah.
The idea there being, I guess, that if you're discovered and eliminated as part of a bot army, they're going to probably track the IP address, and then that'll prevent you from sandbagging people in the future. So that they exit now, they can restart later when things calm down. But here we've got my David Hogg. I think he's lost 4,000 people. Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, he lost a few thousand himself. And again, this is widespread. We've seen the opposite thing on the conservative side. Tucker Carlson was reinstated on Twitter, picked up 56,000 new followers in under 24 hours.
That's insane. Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, too. A lot of right-wingers are going to be returning to Twitter now that, Tucker himself was, reinstated on Twitter. He was recently banned, I believe, and now he's back on. And not only that, you're going to have other right-wingers who voluntarily left Twitter who are going to be coming back to follow these accounts, these new accounts that were either reinstated or right-wingers who finally decided to go on Twitter for the first time or get back on Twitter. Because a lot of people gave up on Twitter. I never really got into Twitter because of how censorshipful it was or whatever, how censored everything was on there.
Yeah, and I quit messing with it for a long time because I was going back to the 2020 election. That's when I was thrown off 3 different times, and after that I just quit. I go on every once in a while to check for stories for us to cover other things, but I actually started using it again over the last couple of days, and I noticed several other prominent conservatives that again self quarantine, we'll call it. They took themselves off the platform when all these shenanigans started going on. And now they're coming back, and I mean, they're whoever runs Twitter's scared right now. They're not throwing people off for anything. We'll get to that here in a second.
Yeah, and I love seeing that as well. And speaking of throwing off Twitter, Sean King voluntarily threw himself off Twitter for a brief moment, and it was pretty funny to see.
Yeah, Talcum X is back though. He then today it was going after, I think it was Jack Posobiec, who was, I guess, the first prominent figure to point out that the guy had closed his account yesterday. So then he pops back on and says, no, I had security concerns. I was getting threatened by, January 6th insurrectionists and white supremacists. Yeah,
you know how all those January 6th insurrectionists who are currently being held without trial for the last over a year now in federal custody, they're stuck in solitary confinement 24 hours a day, but most people don't know they actually get out every so often to go on Twitter because that's what the federal, they're like, do you want a phone call with your lawyer or do you want to go harass minorities on Twitter? And of course, the January 6th insurrectionists, the traitors to the nation, they say, let me on Twitter, give me an hour to harass minorities. And then they go find Sean King, the most black person in America.
Yeah.
Look at my skin tone next to him on screen. Sean King is not black at all. He's 0% black, and yet he thinks that he's the most harassed black man on the internet. Dude, you're not even black, and you don't get harassed at all. And if you do, it's by me, and I'm just calling you white.
Yeah, well, Martin Luther Cream over here is already having more meltdowns, blaming. He's already saying, this is going to turn into a hotbed of terrorism. It's the usual story. Women and minorities hardest hit because Elon Musk is going to take over the platform, take down a lot of these artificial barriers that they put up over the last few years. And I don't even think it's going to be a full-on free speech platform. It's just going to be better than it is today. But that absolutely terrifies the left because they will not be able to control the narrative now. People will not get thrown off for pointing out when somebody's lying, hopefully it's our next slide. Yes, it is. Like the Washington Post. Libs of TikTok. they hit 100,000 followers, or sorry, 1 million followers now.
Wow.
After being reinstated. And she's, of course, thanking Taylor Lorenz here, the cry bully that originally doxed her and then got her thrown off.
Yeah.
So again, like, these people can't handle it. The left has had a really bad month. I mean, they lost their mask mandate. Elon Musk bought Twitter. Barack Obama's podcast got canceled on Spotify.
Wow, are you guys tired of winning yet? This is fantastic to see some victories finally, and at the most unexpected time too. With the executive branch and the House of Representatives being left wing, the courts seeming to be overwhelmingly left wing even, but yet we still can achieve these victories even in times where we don't have the government on our side. And maybe it's something to take note of, that you don't always need the majority in the House and Senate to make some good things happen. You don't always need the president to be on your side to make good things happen. The left certainly has got a lot passed through under the Trump administration that we don't like.
Yeah.
So, the most censorship we've ever seen in the U.S. before happened under Trump, not because of Trump. It's in spite of him. In fact, it's all these companies who hate him and hate his supporters that went so hardcore on the censorship. So now we can turn things around. It doesn't even matter if Biden's in office or not. We need to keep pushing and fighting to reverse all these terrible things these companies have done, whether that means helping people like Elon or supporting his decision to just buy up companies like Twitter. And I don't think, as Mike alluded to, that Twitter is just going to become like a bastion of free speech. I don't think it's going to become like Gab. I think Gab will always be like the free speech, the true free speech alternative online. But these other apps like Getter or Truth or Twitter, even if they have right-wing people running them, I don't think they're going to be absolutely pro-free speech as other platforms like Gab or Odyssey are. But nevertheless, I think you're absolutely right, Mike, that these platforms like Twitter now are going to become more fair. And I do think that you're going to have people banned for only serious infractions and not silly things like when Trump was banned. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. I don't think we're going to see any politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Trump being banned on Twitter anymore, because it just makes absolutely no sense. You might be able to see controversial public figures like David Duke or Richard Spencer or Nick Fuentes or these other people coming back on Twitter, because even if they are controversial, they have large followings and they are highly influential people in politics. And for that reason, their voice should be heard on the basis of them being so influential and well known in politics.
Yeah, and if you're talking about like an elected politician, they deserve the same ability to communicate with their constituents that anybody else would be given.
Yeah.
So I don't think Twitter is the modern public square. So you can't just take that away from somebody that's in elected office because you don't like their views. If they haven't done anything else that's actually illegal, and I do get there do need to be certain restrictions, like obviously you don't want people spamming or doing other things like that, or outright harassment campaigns. But otherwise, it should be open. People should be able to voice their mind. I mean, you can block whoever you want. You don't have to listen to tweets.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And especially with elected officials, whether you agree with them or not, it's almost like it's in the public interest to know what these politicians are thinking, right? And this was almost like the argument in favor of Trump having a Twitter from the left-wing side. They're like, no, like, the worst thing about Trump is his Twitter. Like, let him have it. Like, let him rip those out, because that's the only thing that the moderates don't like him for. Everything else he's doing is great for America. Yeah. Even people like Ben Shapiro would be like, if Trump just got off Twitter, he would be great. Okay, so, like, the left-wingers kind of took note of that, and they're like, if the only thing that we have against Trump is his mean tweets, then maybe we should let him stay on Twitter. And I don't think that anyone was not voting for Trump because of Twitter, as much as people said that. But I do think that that actual argument is a good one. No matter who it is, let them speak. Like, I want to know the truth about what people are thinking. And even if it's bad or offensive or whatever, if they are an elected official or running for office, especially, those are the people that we should know the most information about and have the biggest spotlight put on them. Don't censor them. Put them under the spotlight so we can all know what they believe. Exactly.
And I think with with Trump, the left saw it as a mixed bag. I think they did take advantage of the air quotes mean tweets and kind of play that against him. But I think they also hated it because it was his chance to bypass the media, where they couldn't corrupt and twist his message or show things out of context or whatever. Because it was just that quick blurb. It's out there. It goes direct to the public. And then it becomes a lot more difficult for them to hide and twist things into their message and their narrative.
Right. Yeah. And I love this this tweet you have in the background here. Do you want to read through the thread quick?
Yeah. So as I've alluded to several times, there's plenty of people on the left whose brains are just breaking right now. So I don't know who this Richard Hanania, or I don't know how you pronounce it. Maybe if this guy's famous, I don't know who he is. Elon Musk takes over Twitter. He's a billionaire who doesn't even have a master's degree. Is that who we're going to trust with the future of our democracy? This is Zuby replying back, yes. How does that make you feel as a black man? There are young black men out there with degrees living in poverty as we speak. I'm actually a black woman. Please don't assume my gender. I'm sorry. Even with my PhD in JD, I still don't always get it right. I appreciate you correcting me, and your words will guide me going forward. Like, I thought this was a troll or a joke, but it isn't.
No, it's real. It's real. And it's crazy how these people think. And something I've noticed is the left is so obsessed with credentials and degrees and diplomas and everything. And it's like, this Elon Musk is like the richest man on the planet and in history. And you're mad that he doesn't have a master's degree. The guy went to Stanford University, okay? Like, if you want to go all, technical degrees, I'm sure he has like a very active part in the technological side at Tesla and with the Boring Company and these other ventures he's in. I'm pretty sure he's a smart guy and doesn't need a master's degree from like the local college to prove how smart he is. And even in the guy's rebuttal, he's like, oh, sorry, I am a PhD and I do have a JD and I am sorry. What does that have to do with anything?
Zero. I actually replied back to this guy earlier too, and I just pointed out, well, Bill Gates doesn't have, he's a dropout. Same with Mark Zuckerberg.
They don't even have degrees, I don't think, do they? Like bachelor's degrees?
No, I think they both dropped out of college. Same with Steve Jobs. A lot of these heroes of the left, they're dropouts, but a lot of successful people are. They figured out early on that they don't need the education, especially if they're innovators. They need the basic skills to get the job done, the engineering or the programming or whatever knowledge, and then they take their own initiative from there and build something up.
Well, and what do degrees do? Like, I have 2 degrees. I went to a very good university, a top 10 university in the U.S., and like I could brag about this all day long. I never do because it's pointless. My degrees have not helped me in any way at all in my political career. Not one of my degrees is in political science. You think that would be worth something? No, literally nothing. Maybe if you go into like establishment politics, then you can use the connections you got along the way. But that's it. Like, there's no book learning that you would get in university. I didn't even buy maybe this is why I didn't learn anything. I didn't even buy the textbooks. I still had a 4.0 GPA because, smart people are smart, dumb people are dumb. It doesn't matter if you go to university. And I'm still smarter than all these leftists like, oh, I have my master's and PhD and this and this. It's like, yeah, but you're still an idiot. Like, anyone can just go to school and write what the professor believes on a piece of paper. It's not hard. You're just proving you have enough disposable income to throw at a university to get a degree and walk out. C's and B's get degrees, buddy. It's not impressive to have a degree anymore.
No, not at all. I think anymore it's basically a tool that some companies use just to screen out people for jobs, and even then I don't think it's necessary. I think in most positions you're better off hiring somebody with experience or somebody with initiative than somebody that has a piece of paper that tells you they know something.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, I respect people if they can produce results. And that's what I respect and admire. And that's what will gain you my loyalty and my trust and my respect. If you can produce something of value, but just simply having a degree is not producing something of value. It's what you do after you have your degree. And this guy, in his tweets, he was like, there's so many black people who have degrees and they're in poverty. It's like, first of all, citation needed on that one. Second of all, well, then get out there and contribute something of value to the world. If you are producing something of value, you will get hired. This is like I'm 22, I have this figured out. There's no way that you can't be an adult and not understand this. If you have something of value to offer someone, they will pay you for that thing of value, right? So make a product that is valuable to buy. Make yourself have a service that you can provide that's valuable. You know what I mean? And then you'll have a job.
Exactly. I mean, because again, if you're talking about somebody with a degree in grievance studies or underwater basket weaving or whatever, that is not useful in the real world. I mean, you better get real good at bending tacos and flipping burgers because there is nothing else in your future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is another tweet here from Sarah Gonzalez. Gonzalez.
Yeah. So Sarah Gonzalez, she works for The Blaze, and I really do think at this point somebody better go check the cry closets at Twitter and make sure somebody didn't sneak a razor blade in there, because she's been kind of like testing the water since this morning. As far as I know, she still hasn't been thrown off. I'm going to read through a few of these. The FBI currently exists to entrap white men.
True.
George Floyd was a criminal.
True.
The CDC is a danger to public health.
True.
Fortifying an election is just cheating.
True.
The greatest existential threat to America is the Democrat Party.
True.
There are no birthing people. There are only mothers.
True.
Joe Biden sniffs little girls.
Very true. That one is absolutely 100% true. Verifiable.
So I'm pretty sure whoever's normally like throwing all the right wingers and anybody else that dares to step out of line off off of Twitter.
Isn't it so wonderful to think? Like, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I just have this amazing vision in my mind, exactly of what you're saying now, which is like the person who's normally like reporting everyone, they're like shaking. They're like, am I going to get fired if I like take this tweet down? Before I was encouraged to do it. So now I don't want to lose my job. I get paid like $300 grand a year being a Twitter Janny, a Twitter moderator. I don't want to get fired now if Elon sees that I'm banning everyone.
So that's even better than the image I had. I was just picturing somebody like literally under their desk, under their cubicle, with their blanket in their hand, like sucking their thumb as they cry.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because like the moderators, they should be taking this stuff down according to the old Twitter rules, right? And all the same rules are probably in place as of now, but I bet everyone's just so on edge, all the leftists, that they're like, holy, like we might actually all lose our jobs if we like make Elon Musk mad. So like, don't make Musk mad. That's probably what they're all thinking right now.
Well, I saw another story, I think this was yesterday, that prior to making this announcement, making this official, they actually took steps to lock down the code at Twitter so it couldn't be sabotaged internally by employees that worked there that thought it was like their duty to bring down the platform so Elon Musk couldn't take over and introduce free speech.
Insane. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, these people are nuts. But if you look at the donations of employees, Twitter is one of the most left-wing companies in America when you look at the employees.
Yes.
And I think it was only second to, like, for major companies, second to Netflix. 98% or something crazy like that of their employees donated to Democratic candidate, or rather, of all the employees who donated to political campaigns, 98% of them were towards Democratic candidates. So that really puts in perspective when less than 2% of the entire workforce at Twitter, if they donate money, would donate to Republicans, Libertarians, any other party other than, you know, the Democrats. That would even include like the Green Party and stuff, right? Other left-wing parties, Socialist Party, right? 98% of people donated to Democrats. Like, that's how democratic Twitter is, the employees. So Elon definitely has an uphill battle. He doesn't only have to negotiate all of the left-wing crazy people in America, but also his own employees that he's inheriting from this company. It won't be as simple as just saying, like, we're going to allow any speech on here guys. Like, he has to manage a variety of different variables here.
I don't know. I mean, this seems like an easy enough problem to fix to me. All you have to do is tell your employees they can only identify as their biological gender. I mean, that'll probably take care of half of them.
They're out the door. Yeah, I know. That would be wonderful to see. And I'm hoping that, you know, maybe there's enough young guys out there who are just out of high school and stuff who aren't all politically woke and stuff. A lot of these young guys who just graduate high school who can replace all these old, you know, 30-some-year-old liberal coders. And we can get some fresh new blood, conservative blood, and young, normal guy blood in the company.
Yeah, I actually saw kind of an interesting podcast or clip from one yesterday, and I don't know who this was. It was actually shared on another show I was watching. But they had somebody call in that was, you know, very optimistic, that thought this may be an opportunity to inject new life and new value into Twitter. As that staff quits, you're going to replace them with people that are now excited about it again, that you're going to bring in your young right-wingers or even just people that aren't politically motivated that want to turn it into a real public square again, turn it into something that is actually useful and beneficial to society. And
well, that would be good to see, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would hope that does happen, because we do want a major social media platforms that are allowing speech. And, you know, YouTube is not pro-free speech, of course, but they are better than most of the other companies as of now. YouTube is usually like the last place politically controversial people will get kicked off of. And you can, at least as of now, you can survive on YouTube pretty long. Now, they are getting more and more strict, but it's not nearly as bad as it is on like TikTok, where it's like, I think you can get banned just by looking up AJ Wilms on TikTok at this point. Yeah, it's not as bad as like, you know, Facebook and Instagram or well, Twitter used to be, and we'll see what it turns into now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure TikTok, if you even search your name, they red flag your account, and then
I think they do, yeah, because I'm on my 24th account there, and I can't post a video without it getting taken down like that. I can't even. It's hard to be AJ Wilms on TikTok. So my idea here is I'm gonna find friends and I'll just send them videos to upload on their personal accounts. I'll just be the one talking, and they can get all the credit and everything. I don't care. I just need my messages out there. So TikTok, I'm gonna work around your bans.
That's right. We got to get the left to start calling you like the TikTok terrorist. So you're just gonna bypass their bans, get your media up one way or another.
I Allahu Akbar. Okay,
Yeah.
two culturally offensive things this stream from AJ Wilms. This is
Yeah.
why I'm banned on TikTok. But no, you know what? Twitter hopefully is going to become more of a pro-free speech platform where I'm able to culturally appropriate as much as I want, because that's what freedom of speech means. The freedom to protect controversial speech you don't like, not to protect only the speech you do like. There would be no point in protecting speech if we all agreed with it, right?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, like I can't believe we haven't been dinged on Twitch yet. But YouTube, I mean, you can have Little Nas X giving Satan a lap dance, but then we've had videos pulled down, and everything else we put up ends up age restricted.
I know, and it's absolutely ridiculous that those Little Nas X videos, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, they're not age restricted, at least not as of now. Maybe they will be in the future. I hope so. But our videos, Punching Left podcast, which you guys are watching now, they automatically get age restricted just to limit the viewership that we're able to get. The algorithm does not push our shows out to our subscribers. Our shows are not pushed afterwards. I mean, it's a real mess. And some of our videos, like the long lost episode 8 or 7 of
7,
our podcast,
I think, is the one that they nuked, like for
got
violent
removed
content.
entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally removed all. So YouTube is going downhill pretty fast, but at least it's not as bad as TikTok and other platforms as of now.
And we are in the process of loading all of our material up to Odyssey at the moment. I think we just have a couple videos left to put up. So that is a good place if you want to go look at our back catalog. There is some good stuff there. You can even see our video that got stripped down. So
yes, our banned videos, the ones that are
Yes.
too dangerous to be on YouTube, are on Odyssey. So that is Odyssey. Well, it's all on punchingleft.com. You can find Odyssey, our Odyssey channel, on punchingleft.com.
all our links to all our platforms and social media. So as we know, the left has a major case of brainworms. I don't know if this is just because of everything else, all the other bad news they've gotten so far this month, but I really hope they take CNN's advice here, which is exactly who I would listen to, considering they just had CNN Plus didn't even last 30 days. They lost $300 million on it. But they're out there. They just had an opinion piece earlier this morning. Democrats should embrace being woke and make 2022 about the GOP's extremism.
Wow.
That is the best advice I've ever heard.
Yeah, I was about to say that is the worst advice I've ever heard in my life. But yeah, no, this is fantastic. Any Democrats watching, please encourage your local congressmen to go woke or they will go broke. It's one or the other. You can go broke or you can go woke and become a millionaire and get elected, right? This is right. This is the best way to win elections. It's the best way to make money, to pander to minorities, to be very politically correct, to be very culturally sensitive. I do the opposite of this show, basically, and you will for sure just make all this money like CNN did, like Netflix, like all these other woke companies.
Exactly. I'm sure there's a lot of Democrat strategists out there right now that are very upset with CNN. And they're giving away trade secrets.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, hey, don't tell the secrets. But, it's interesting. I actually heard once, and I never confirmed if this was true, but that CNN and a lot of these other major networks are actually in quite a lot of debt to JP Morgan. And basically, they're kind of beholden to the banks renewing their loans that they live off of every year because they basically have no money they actually make because no one watches them anymore. So every venture they do is basically at the direction of the bank who says, look, we're the ones like funding your guys' whole operation. So you're going to do CNN, go and make it woke. And, we get all the money from the Fed and we print money and, who cares? Like, you look into modern economics and how banks can just like create money basically when they lend it out. The banks have quite a lot of disposable income to use, and if they want to push an agenda, they certainly can. And I haven't checked into whether all that is completely accurate, but it does seem very reasonable when I heard one of my professors tell me about this.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense. If the bank is going to loan them money, they will expect to get a return. That may mean changing some of the ways a place does business. So I'm sure they would push an agenda with CNN or any other media piece. And I'm sure that's also probably why they really choose to hold the debt. Because, again, like CNN's been a losing operation for decades, or at least a decade now. And
haven't they like not made any money in like 10 years?
Yeah.
Or something crazy like that?
It's at least 10 years. I was trying to remember if it was 15, because we may be approaching 20 at this point. That basically since the decline of cable in the early 2000s, that was the last time they actually made money.
Yeah, and it's the same with, who was it, Carlos Slim or whoever his name is. I think he's like a Mexican national, and he bought Huffington Post or Wall Street Journal or one of these ones. I know Bezos owns one. The other guy, another billionaire, this one from Mexico, owns one of these outlets. and it doesn't make any money. It was losing money, which is why they were selling it. And he bought it not because it made money. It obviously didn't. It still doesn't. But because access to information, or rather the ability to control information, is so valuable. Yeah, control narratives.
Yeah, and that was Carlos Slim. I think it was Huffington Post, and then Bezos owns Washington Post.
Okay. Oh, right. I always get them confused.
Yeah.
Too many posts.
Exactly. All these stupid newspapers. Why can't they just... Oh, and speaking of which, here we've also got great advice from the New York Times. The New York Times is looking for a reporter right now that can write negative hit pieces about the right wing.
Wow.
I feel like most of the reporters do a pretty good job of...
I was going to say, don't look very far. You go to the coffee room or the break room, and I'm sure there's a handful there.
Yeah. Maybe it's just because everybody's working from home. Maybe they just physically can't find someone.
And they're in New York. Just like throw a rock, you'll hit someone who hates right-wingers in New York City. It's like everyone there is liberal. Like 80% of the city, isn't it?
Yeah. It's higher, upper 70s, I believe, but it's pretty close. Yeah, they just want somebody that can make right-wing media look like extremists.
That's insane. Yeah. Well, and dedicated too, right? I think that's the key word. They're dedicated to just right-wing extremism because they see this is something the left does, which I think is very interesting. They change definitions of extremism. So they'll be like, extremism is when you want to live in a Christian nation or something, right? That's like Christian nationalism. That's like Christian extremism. When like 50 years ago, every single person in America, like even the atheists, wanted to live in like a Christian nation, and they were like, they could openly say like, I don't want any Muslims in the country. I don't want any Buddhists in the country. I don't want any Confucius in the country. I don't want any other religious groups here. This is a Christian nation. I want Christian values. That was just seen as normal, and it is rational when you think, okay, like in Israel, it's a Jewish country. They want their people to be Jewish and their religion to be Jewish. In Middle Eastern countries, they're Muslim. They want Muslim laws and they want Muslim culture. Okay, and then, same with Confucius in India and so on and so forth. So on and so forth. So you look at Christians, it does seem kind of rational for Christians to be like, well, I'm a Christian. Everyone else around me is Christian. Why don't we have Christian values in a Christian nation? But yet that is now considered extreme just because the media has decided that's extreme now. We don't like it. So they just changed the definition of extreme and then label whoever they don't like as extremists. Have you noticed that?
Well, yeah, this goes back to something you said earlier with Bezos and Carlos Slim and everybody else buying media. It's all about controlling the narrative and what people think of as extreme. So you can shift that, the Overton window, where wanting to limit immigration to people that are going to blend into our country, that is now an extremist view.
Oh, yeah.
When again, it should be common sense. And again,
right.
All you have to do is look at other countries. I mean, the Japanese don't let anybody immigrate there. I mean, that's probably a little on the extreme side. But, plenty of other... I think if you want something simple, we just mirror other countries' immigration policy.
Oh, yeah. It's like I said, again, Japan says we want to be Japanese because we're Japan. And Israel says we want to be Israeli because we're Israel, right? Yeah. And, Saudi Arabia says we want to be Arab because we're Saudi Arabian, right? And then they don't even want Yemenis people or Oman people. We probably think, oh, Saudi Arabians and Yemenis people, probably pretty similar. They're right next door. They even say, no, we're like distinct different peoples. We should each have our own countries. So why can't America do the same when it comes to Mexico or even Canada or other nations? Of course, we should be able to preserve our own nation by having our people here. That doesn't seem to be like a crazy thing, but yet the left likes to just redefine things as extreme that they don't say about other countries. I don't hear any hit pieces being written on like Korea. Korea is too Korean, but I do hear America is too white now, or America is too American, or whatever.
Oh yeah, and that's always the way it's going to be. It's a one-way street. So here to jump into our next story here. I'm sure you guys have heard, I think we've alluded to all these fires or other food processing facilities being damaged or taken down one way or another. This is a list of just the ones here within the U.S. that have happened within the last few years, and then the map does include some in Canada. I think this only goes back to 2021. And
there's been a lot more since then too, I believe.
Yeah, I know recently there's been a couple more. I think those are included on this list. But I've also seen some kind of like deceptive information around, like, because what this includes are the major steps in the supply chain, the places that are producing food for thousands. Because I've seen a rebuttal like, I think it's 13,000 of these places total in the U.S. But when you're talking like places that are in volume and in scale, it's really more like 2,000. So if you're losing a whole bunch out of any specific industry, that's where you start having shortages, or you have food that's, farmers grow whatever, and then they don't have any way to sell it because there's no way to process it.
Well, yeah, and I would think that, like, if one of these factories, let's say, supplied like an entire city with food, it's kind of a big deal if that one factory goes under. It's not like, a lot of these retail stores. I'm just assuming, like, just using common sense here, like, if one of these, if you have a store that you depend on and you've depended on for several years or decades, and then it just like is gone overnight, it's probably not really as easy as just picking up the phone and then getting new food in the next day. Like, there's probably a lot of processing, no pun intended with the food processing plants, that goes into like getting a different place and drawing up new contracts and finding a new supplier who can deal with the volume you need and who isn't already too thinly stretched, like already, leasing out its service to any other people. Like, one of these factories burning down seems like it could hit a city or a town or even a whole state pretty hard.
Yeah.
And how many here are burnt down? Like dozens and dozens.
Yeah. Well, and some of these too, like I know a couple of like the beef and pork processing plants that burned down. I think one of them was like a Purdue chicken plant. Like these employed 2,000 plus people.
Wow.
So if you start thinking about it, and these places run 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
That usually 2 shifts they'll do production and 1 shift doing sanitation. So how much food does a place that employs 2,000 or 2,500 people produce a day? Like how many people do they feed? It's got to be in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, if not more.
Right. And I mean, would this not be something you do if you were at war with the country, is take out their food processing centers and ensure that they can't feed the population? You take out a few of these factories or processing centers or whatever they would be called, and all of a sudden tens of thousands of people are going without food now potentially.
Yeah. Well, and it's just also putting even further stress on our supply chain, which is already screwed up. And we know coming this spring, people are not going to be able to get fertilizer to plant crops they'll normally harvest in summer and early fall. So
yeah, things are looking bad. And of course, all of this hurts your wallet too, because this will all inflate the market even more than it has been. But interestingly, and I don't know if you've heard this, but apparently Bill Gates owns over 50% of farmland in the US. This is what I've heard on Twitter quite a lot in the last couple of years, that the majority of farmland is now owned by Bill Gates. And it's interesting to see how Jeff Bezos is very interested in investing into energy and green energy, and Bill Gates is very interested in investing in food. Not just like, oh, I'm going to open up a Whole Foods like Jeff Bezos did also, but like, I'm going to buy as much farmland as I can possibly afford, to the point where half of all U.S. farmland is owned by a single person. And this is extremely concerning if you study like feudal history. It's like whoever controls the food controls you. And when one person controls half of all of America's food, over half, that should be something that's totally throwing up red flags. And like, we think a monopoly on like Netflix is bad or Amazon is bad. Wait till it's food, and no one will be able to stop them, because guess what? Everyone's getting their food, including our government from Mr. Gates here. Yeah,
well, it's not just old man boobs, Bill Gates buying up all the farmland. I mean, Ted Turner's got a huge swath of it. You have the Chinese coming in buying it up. Plus, a lot of other prominent leftists have been investing in either factory farming or buying up large swaths of farmland. Yeah. They know something's coming too, and I don't know if this is just getting ahead of the market, because things will become extremely profitable if you're the one that controls all the food. That's basically Nancy Pelosi's rap. She, everybody's heard of the Wall Street bets and the account that just followed her, and then you're supposed to follow along with whatever investments she makes.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, well, they were banned off Twitter. I'm not sure if they're back on yet. I should probably look into that.
That is genius. Oh my gosh. We should all do that. Follow congressional investments and just invest in whatever they invest in.
Oh man, that'd be like a genius company. Just call it Congressional Investments.
Yeah. Hey, there we go. $1 million idea.
Yeah. Let's we'll stop the stream so that doesn't get out there.
Yeah, exactly, right? We can't have anyone take our idea. No, everyone go do follow Nancy Pelosi's investment portfolio so you can make yourself rich. Because here's the thing, Nancy Pelosi, what's her net worth? Over $100 million.
Yeah.
And how much do people in Congress make per year? House of Representative members? 200, 300 grand a year?
Yeah, well, they just gave themselves a raise, a 20% raise, right as inflation was kicking up. Yeah.
Nice. Really nice, guys. Wow.
Well, they had to offset the inflation we're going to have by, fall.
Because, making, 250 grand a year during these troubling times is just untenable. You can't live off less than that. They had to give themselves a raise of whatever, like 70, or maybe not that much, but like $30,000, $40,000, because They got to offset those costs of inflation. Now, they could maybe pass some policies in the government that can lighten the blow to the American people during these times. They could maybe stop sanctioning Russia as much, which would help us out in our economy here. But no, instead, they need to prioritize taking more tax dollars from us, the American people who struggle with inflation, and give it to themselves in liquid cash form, in the form of a paycheck.
Well, Nancy Pelosi needs those $10 tubs, pints of ice cream, and she obviously needs some dentures that fit too. Yeah. So she needs that money.
Yeah, of course. But here's the thing. She's already worth over $100 million, if I recall correctly. And how do you get that money? How is it that you can be a congressional member, make a few $100,000 a year at most? That's the salary. That's what you're supposed to get. And then have a net worth of over $100 million. Does that not imply that there's been, in the middle of being elected to Congress and now a bunch, as in tens of millions of dollars, being funneled into your account? Who did that, and do you owe them something? Because you're in a position of power where you decide where my money goes. You decide where the lives of Americans go insofar as declaring war and such. This is a major concern when you look at like Biden and his son and his ties to Ukraine and to all these other countries. It's like, I don't want to get the U.S. involved in a war because some of these politicians are getting their pockets lined. I don't even want my taxes raised because some of you politicians are getting your pockets lined by various companies or individuals.
Yeah, well, and with all of them, there is that corruption, especially with Ukraine. I'm pretty sure that just uses a money laundering operation.
Yeah.
But with Nancy Pelosi, it's also, her husband's works for a defense contractor, and she's written legislation that's paid out to his company. That's not necessarily always corrupt, but when you keep happening over and over again, or if he bonuses off this stuff, or however his pay is structured, maybe somebody should be looking into that. But we don't have any real journalists left anymore that care about this kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone said in the chat too that terms in Congress should be capped, just like it is for president of the United States, right? Like have term limits for Congress. And that's absolutely true. It's insane to think how Nancy Pelosi, how long has she been in office? Since like
since the Civil War
or something? Yeah, since the Civil War. Yeah, I saw this meme once, and it was like, how old is Nancy Pelosi? And it's like 86. And then the next thing was like, how long can demons live? And it's like 1,400 years. And he's like, no, it's like a crying guy.
Oh, that's great.
No, there should be term limits for people in Congress. And I really do like the fact that in the House of Representatives, every 2 years there's elections for everyone in the House. And I think that's awesome because it puts you on trial basically every 2 years, whereas senators go 6 years before they have to get reelected. So for those of you who don't know, the one thing I actually did learn in my degree, every 2 years there's elections for the House and the Senate, but only 1/3 of the Senate is up for reelections every 2 years. So then, every 6 years, all the House or all the Senate is reelected usually.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the Senate ought to go back to, instead of being elected by the people, it ought to be by state governments, so they have some skin in the game. Give them some power back.
Well, and it's interesting because, again, like a lot of people don't know, but the founding fathers never intended for the people to pick like the president and vice president. It was always going to be up to the House of Representatives themselves to elect a president and vote on one, and then the Senate to elect a vice president, who is also the other name for a vice president of America is the president of the Senate. So the Senate would pick their president and the vice president of the U.S., and then the House of Representatives would elect a president. And I don't know, maybe things would be better, maybe things would be worse. Today things would be worse, but maybe throughout most of history, things probably would have worked out better if we had strong Republicans in the House of Representatives that just get to pick. Maybe not though in today's day, because who would be president if the House got to pick of Republicans? Like,
I'd be
I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be some
Lindsey Graham.
It'd be some wuss rhino that none of us want.
Yeah.
I think with the presidential election, I do like the idea of that being voted on by the people on a state by state, like the way things are apportioned now.
Yeah.
But I would like to see the Senate go back to where state governments are selecting those representatives and give some power back to the states. That would also prevent some of these senators from signing legislation that will negatively or positively impact their state. You'll get people in there that are more fighting for states' rights and other things on more the way things are intended.
Yeah, that would be great. And it's so unfortunate that there's so many ways that these people in Congress manipulate the federal tax code and federal legislation to benefit their constituents in a useless way. Like, I'll give an example. An example I know of is, like, there's decommissioned military equipment that consistently Congress will vote to spend tens of millions of dollars recommissioning because it gives jobs to these individual Congress people's districts. But the issue is like, this military equipment is like decommissioned. It doesn't work anymore. It's broken. But we spend tens of millions of dollars just having people inspect it and look at it. So really what you're doing is you're taking American people's tax dollars and you're funneling it into like one random congressman's district. And for some reason, this consistently gets passed, either A, because they're helping their friend out and now he's going to win re-election by making jobs, or two, because then he can say, oh, you guys aren't voting for a military bill? You guys are like anti-patriotic? You guys don't love the U.S. troops? None of that money's going to the troops. It's going towards nothing. And you're just trying to line your pockets yourself and create a lot of money in your district. But no American citizen is really benefiting from this. And yet all of our tax dollars are being taken in the millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah. Well, we see the same corruption over and over again, whether it's the billions of dollars that have gone into Baltimore for different projects with no upside.
Yeah.
President Trump points that out, and suddenly he's a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe again. Bridges to nowhere, or all these other just junk projects that go on 10 times as long as they're supposed to, and they soak up 10 times the amount of money that in overruns. And all that is just ways for people to return political favors, line pockets, everything else.
Yeah, well, Boeing's very invested in this as well, too, with the defense contracts they get. And Boeing is like a very large supporter. I mean, it's a plane company. A lot of people know them for their like airlines, but they make quite a lot of equipment for the U.S. military. So they fund enormously both parties, both political parties, because they know that they want to be the go-to guys to get the military contracts. And this is what people consider the military-industrial complex. And it's not just Boeing, but many other weapons manufacturers. And I think it's honestly quite sick that we have private companies who can profiteer from warfare. War is not something that I think you should be able to profit from. It's even worse that you have these politicians invested in these armament companies, and then they vote on whether or not we go to war, which will like blow their stock portfolio up through the roof, hundreds of thousands of percentage points.
Yeah, you're exactly right, though. And that's why, like, we haven't, Donald Trump didn't get us involved in any new wars. Like, yes, there were obviously missile strikes and other things that he committed to, little operations, but no new boots on the ground anywhere, no like large scale invasions. Yeah. So, Lockheed Martin and a lot of these General Dynamics, they were all getting thirsty. And now that Biden's in there, we are going to end up back in wars and conflicts all over the place. So we can start sinking money into weapons, and somebody's got to build the bombs to blow up the kids, right, Obama?
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, that's what's happening so often in politics. And Trump was really the exception to the rule with this. And obviously, he did conduct some military operations. And I think this was under the advice of Jared Kushner and John Bolton and other neocons who were really pushing Trump into war. I don't think that was Trump's main intent. It certainly wasn't when he was campaigning. But you have people like Obama, you have people like Bush, you have people like Clinton even, you have Bill, that is. You even have now with Joe Biden, more of a war hawk approach, it seems, to foreign policy, not because the U.S. is strong enough to be like the military of the world or the policeman of the world, but just because all the lobbyists in Washington and that general like Washington esque elite all want war because it is so profitable if you're invested on the right side of it.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, like, I don't think that there would be any four-year term within any president where there wouldn't be some kind of military action necessary. But there's a big difference between, Donald Trump luring Soleimani onto a tarmac in Iraq to drone strike him as a direct response to a missile strikes from Iran, and just an endless war somewhere that that we are not benefiting from directly as the United States, where it's gone well beyond a response to something that we are basically there just to build up money for, again, your Lockheed Martins, General Dynamics, Raytheon, your companies like that are your major weapons manufacturers.
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of the few industries that I think, most of the time I think, okay, the free market can provide good products and there's competition, and for that reason, the government should just probably hire a private company to deal with whatever it needs. But I think in terms of like the armaments industries, like I said, it seems like on a moral level, not on like an economic one or a pragmatic one, but like on a moral level, there's something deeply wrong to me about allowing a private company to gain so much profit off of weapons that are going to be used in war. It seems very immoral to me that especially politicians can invest in armament industries armament companies that make weapons and bombs, and then they will vote on whether or not those bombs are purchased by the government to blow up people. To me, it's very immoral, and we should have like a, I mean, we publicly pay with tax dollars for a military. Our military should be researching and creating weapons themselves. Our military has been great at this historically. We've never needed to lean on Boeing before in America. We've always been a great power when we've invested ourselves into these weapons and research and such. The nuclear bomb was not invented by some private company we needed to buy the info from. If the U.S. wants to invest in weapons and technology, we can do that and be successful. But in that sense, at least, it's not as immoral as like a paid for company who makes a living off of this, and then investors in the company. I don't know. All of that to me seems very shady, morally speaking,
Well, it'd be interesting to go back and look and see where that shift really occurred, because I know that, it was pre-World War II where we started to shift to where private companies were developing new weapons and new technologies. Right. And I think some of that was to fill a gap and fill a need. But then where did that change at to where it is now, where it is, Lockheed Martin Skunk Works building all of our stealth aircraft, or
right, and it is kind of interesting that we would allow a private company and like private citizens to have that much power. That like, what if Boeing just turned off the tap and said, no, we're not providing. Like China offered us $3 billion and you're only offering us $1 billion, so we're just not going to make any weapons. And then what? The U.S. is completely dependent on private companies that can be bought off like that. Libertarians would argue their legal obligation is not to any government or anything, it's to whoever their shareholders are. So if China offers them $10 billion or $1 trillion to not do business with the US, then doesn't Boeing have a legal obligation to its shareholders to do what's in its best economic interest, which would be selling out to a foreign country? I mean, think about it. If China says we'll collectivize and use our money for the betterment of our nation, so we'll buy out Boeing and we'll buy out all these various armament industries that the US depends on. I mean, isn't that something that could realistically happen, at least theoretically?
Yeah, or what's the likelihood of some piece of high-tech equipment going out the back door to a country that hates us because,
right,
there's a high profit? And well, actually, we know of that happening. We know of different secrets being sold to China and other nations.
Right.
So yeah, we don't even have to.
It does happen. I've heard it happen in the last couple of years. I think this happened with Israel. Actually, we gave them we gave them military technology, and then they sold it to China under the pretense of you can only use it for civilian purposes. So we gave them Israel this high tech satellite information or whatever research that would help them militarily, and then they turned around and sold it to China, our adversary, and we're like, but only for civilian purposes. Don't you guys ever use this for military purposes? And of course China's like, okay, sure, whatever. But I mean, this has happened with our allies in the past, unfortunately, where they're acting in their own best interest. They're like, look, the US gave us $1 million idea, of course we're going to sell it to whoever is the highest bidder. That's what nation states do. They act in their own best interest. So we need to be very careful, not only when dealing with nation states, but also with private companies, that of course these entities are going to act in their own best interest, and that usually probably isn't also in our best interest. We need to look out for our own best interest, the same way that China does, the same way that Israel does, the same way that Russia does, the same way that Ukraine does, because right now America is just giving out handouts to every country on earth, it seems.
Yeah, we need to actually return to an America first policy like we were starting to under Trump, because God knows you can't trust any globalist or global organization like these people. The UN's World Health Organization, they are currently on a mission. I think their deadline is end of the month, where they want to have 70% of the world's countries sign a treaty with the WHO, which I didn't even know that was a thing until I read about this a few days ago, that will allow the World Health Organization to go in and basically audit and enforce vaccine policy worldwide for the next pandemic.
Absolutely insane.
Yes. So in the U.S. case, they've already said, well, this would force a waiver of constitutional rights for individual citizens, and that this wouldn't hold up to scrutiny in the courts. But I guess Australia has already either signed or going to sign, and there's several other Western nations that have signed this already, not to mention dozens of third world countries that have nothing to lose. They're going to get free vaccines out of it.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking about Africa is going to get plundered by this. Asia, these Asian countries, probably maybe a lot of Middle Eastern countries. I'm not sure where they would stand, but these poorer nations, Holy, they have no choice. Like, what are they going to do? Stand up to the WHO, stand up to the UN? We are very, very fortunate in the West, and especially in America, that we can, as Americans, we almost have this attitude instinctively. We go look at the UN and we're like, yeah, we don't like you guys. Screw off. And we can get away with it because we're more powerful than the UN right now. But unfortunately, there's a lot of countries out there. Like, what's like the Congo going to do? What's Uganda going to do? What are any of these African countries going to do? What are these Asian countries like Vietnam or Laos going to do? They're just going to kind of have to take it. They have no recourse. They don't have the economy to support themselves. They don't have the military fortitude to defend themselves or enforce any type of pressure on these international organizations. It really is up to the U.S. to lead the fight against this globalist agenda, which sounds kind of counterintuitive. Like, the job of nationalists is to fight globally against globalism. But I mean, the U.S. is really the only one who can do this at this point.
Yeah. Well, and there's times to flex our power and times not to.
Yep.
But you're right. If you're somebody in that's relying on the UN for food or whatever
Medicine,
else, yeah, how are you going to say no? We're not signing that treaty. I mean, I do think there's countries that could say no and back away from it, including powerful ones like India.
Yeah. Right.
But it's what's the incentive for them to do it versus not doing it, and will this then be used as kind of like what we're doing to Russia to isolate them right now? We then take away. If you won't let our World Health Organization inspectors into your country, then you can't trade in dollars anymore. Well, you're going to take you off the SWIFT payment system. We're going to do X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And even with India, you think about the population, they have almost 2 billion people there. I mean, it's insane. What is it? 1.7 billion people they have as a population?
Something like that. It's
quite high, right?
Yes.
And you could think that with that many people to have to support, it's not like India is like the most lush green place. They have to rely quite a lot on other nations to be able to even feed their population, to give medicine to their population, necessary medication, not like the vaccine stuff. So you could imagine, like, the UN, imagine all the stuff that goes on behind closed doors where they're like, look, India, you don't want to help us out. Maybe you're not going to be getting all that food aid you need. Not going to be getting all that medicine. Maybe you cooperate. Maybe you get, maybe we can tell the world that India needs humanitarian aid, and we'll tax the West at, like, we'll take $100 million US from all these Western nations. We'll give it to you guys. And that's a very, very difficult thing to manage as a leader of a nation. I know the current Indian prime minister is quite right-wing. He's a bit of a populist, from my understanding. I don't study Indian politics that much, so Indian viewers, please don't be even more mad at me today. But from my understanding, he's like a more of a populist like Trump. Yes. Hopefully he does make the right decision and stand up for his people. But you could imagine, very realistically, someone cracking to the pressure of like hundreds of millions of dollars for the people, food for the people, medicine for the people, or, having to stand up against this tyranny. Like, they're big, decisions to be made.
And I don't know if Modi in India has taken a stance on this yet or not. I just brought them up because, again, volume, and they're a country that probably is capable of standing on their own 2 feet, of buying the food that they need legitimately. But yeah, there are so many smaller nations that are reliable on foreign aid, or completely reliant on foreign aid.
When I wonder what will happen in the future of India too, because I heard someone told me that I've always talked about the different castes and how there's actually, like, believe it or not, genetic differences between the different castes. People like to think, oh, just one day someone decided they're in the upper caste and someone's in the lower, and we'll keep it that way. There are, like, genetic differences between them, almost in the same way there's almost like genetic differences between Southerners and Northerners. Like, they talk different, they look different, they act different, they have different behaviors. Like, there's something different about Southerners and Northerners in America, or Canadians and Americans. Like, you can kind of see a difference between them. And apparently in India, what they're doing is they're really buying into liberalism recently, and they're doing all these affirmative action programs to try to get everyone even. But because there's these massive genetic and cultural differences between the different castes in India, it's causing major problems, sort of like affirmative action is in America, where they're punishing the students who deserve to be in school to help the students who, like, genuinely did not get good enough grades to be at these schools. So I don't know if India will continue to buy into this, like, egalitarianism and liberalism of the West. And if they do, it's going to be to their detriment, and they will start suffering like the West is now. So sorry, I didn't mean to go too off track, but I think when you were talking about India's strength, like, I hope they can remain strong. I think that they're a good people, it seems, and I would hate to see them go down the same path as America.
Well, yeah, and you actually brought up a really good point, especially making with the comparison to affirmative action. Like, I know people that because they have this similar to the way our affirmative action system works here, they have this pressure where they hold extra spots for people that come from a lower class, especially at universities, especially higher end schools. Where I have a friend that she's in, or her family wasn't the top cast or the top two. I think it was like the third one down. But even being there, she had to wait for several years to get into the engineering school that she went into, coming back and like retesting every year. And it was basically because they were taking all these people that were from low caste. They would take the lower test scores. They would all end up dropping out and failing.
Right.
Whereas she went there, tried hard, and finally got through the program when she was there. But
Well,
again,
they're fighting against nature. It doesn't make any sense to me.
no, not at all. If you lower the bar on entry, then people get in there where everybody has the same test. You're not doing somebody a favor if they're not capable of passing and getting a grade. They'd be better off going to a different program or a different school or studying a year.
Right, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with acknowledging that there's differences between people. Like, for example, Singapore has one of the highest IQs in the world for average IQs per country, right? And the average IQ there is like 110. If I lived in Singapore, I'd probably have a very hard time competing for like a job there against like the average Singaporean, because there's a good chance, just statistically speaking, they're smarter than me. It doesn't mean that like they're better than me or they're morally superior or anything like that. But I wouldn't want to be let into a school I didn't deserve to be in. And people are going to be looking at me differently. I'm not going to be able to succeed as much as I should be. And there's a lot of negative social and practical repercussions to being allowed into an environment that you haven't earned your way into, and instead you've been artificially put there. So, in the same way, it's like, black people make up 80% of the NBA because they're good at sports or whatever, right? I don't think it's because it's black supremacist or whatever, and that's the reason why there's so many black people. Maybe they're just good at sports, whatever. But I don't think there should be affirmative action to put more Asians in basketball because there's less represented. Just like let people do their own thing, and whoever deserves to be there should get there. It should be totally merit-based.
Yeah, exactly. It should be everything should be exactly like pro sports, where you'd want the best of the best. Watch, that probably is going to change. That'll be the next shoe to drop. Is
maybe
we're going to need need the NFL to have an accurate racial makeup of the United States.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of black Americans would be mad because they'd go from like 80% of the NBA teams to like 13%, which would be quite a dramatic drop. But I think that's why the affirmative action stuff hasn't hit the sports teams, and I don't think it should either. I think it should be a merit-based thing, but I don't know, like. Something interesting I've always thought is, would it be wrong if Asian people, for example, said we want our own NBA teams in the same way men and women have their own NBA teams, or like all sports teams? I wonder if different groups of people, based on like racial categories, this would be a controversial thing to advocate for. But I would wonder if they would ever say like, look, we just want to compete against like other Asians, and then that way we can have our own teams, similar to how like women are like, well, we want to have our own teams so we can compete against each other.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting, but I guess I bet it would also turn out just like the WNBA or whatever, where at the end of the day it wouldn't be profitable enough to maintain a league or keep it going.
Yeah, I wonder.
Because people go to watch professional sports because it's the best of the best, regardless of where they came from or their background or anything else.
Yeah.
You're paying to watch whoever our world's top performers are at that time in that sport.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like I've always criticized sports. What's the word I'm looking for? Professional sports, because unfortunately I love watching local sports. Like there's like a local high school by me, and I'm always saying to my girlfriend we should go watch like one of the games there, because I want to support my community and I want to cheer on like the kids at my local high school to win their game against like the other city or whatever. And I think there's a lot of like pride to take in your hometown and the people you live with in your actual community, the people you see at the grocery store and on a day-to-day basis, the people who, your taxes are paying for their school and their education, the teachers. It's your community, right? And I think there's something very great about supporting your community in that way and helping them with their sports and cheering them on and supporting them there. But with national sports, like everyone in like the NFL hates me because I'm conservative and because I like Trump and because I am who I am, right? And it's like, I don't know, I'm losing respect for people who every day turn on Sunday football or go to all the football games. And I'm like, you're watching some guy who doesn't know who you are. You don't know who he is. He hates you. He kneels during the anthem. You have no connection whatsoever with this guy. And I think the only logical or the only reasonable take is kind of like you said, it's watching the best of the best. But even then, I think I would have a lot more respect for someone who's watching like, the actual community team member cheering them on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think though, like even with like when you talk like minor league teams or whatever, they don't really have a community connection anymore. Like, there's I think it's a AAA league team here in Dayton, the Dayton Dragons, which they actually hold an interesting record. They have the most consecutive sold out games for any professional sports team, including.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, basically it's because the stadium's undersized. But anyway, there's no connection to the players. It's not like they're from the community or anything else. Most of them are, injured professional baseball players or people that are coming up from minor leagues or whatever. Every once in a while you get a local person that happens to get on that team, but there is no real local connection other than it's downtown and, people can go down there to watch a game.
Yeah, and if it was like a conservative kind of thing, I would be totally in support of like going there. Like if it's like NASCAR, I'd be like, yes, everyone get out and watch NASCAR. Well, even they're moving left wing now. But, if it was a traditionally conservative company or teams, I would be like, yeah, support them because they believe in your beliefs and they're going to make this country better and spread our ideas and normalize our positions. But especially when it comes to professional sports, so many of them have moved left wing that you're supporting people who hate you, who hate your kids, who hate your nation. And it's just absurd to me. Like, it's not like this is, again, like the local high school, even like the local college, even where it's like, oh, the person I'm supporting, politics aside, they're a member of my community. I help them. They help me. If I was ever in need, I could go to their home. I know where they live. I can shake their hand. I see them at church. There's something very sincere about that connection. But there's something very insincere about going to a giant stadium and, again, watching someone who has no idea who you are and doesn't even like you.
Exactly. It all comes back to that community connection, and we don't have that with a professional sports team or even with these minor league teams anymore. I was just kind of thinking back there, and there used to be, a local hockey team here. And I kind of wonder if, like, with the shift, with more of what we do being online and oriented in that direction, is if part of the problem is people just literally do not have that local community connection anymore, or not enough of them do to support something like that.
Yeah, I wonder. And it's unfortunate that I think you're absolutely correct that we are moving away from having in real life communities. And that's why I advocate so much, and I know I'm sure you do too, to build communities and, advocate for our viewers and for everyone that to like get involved in their community and help out in their community and invest into their church, invest into their friend groups, invest into like hobbies that you have in your local clubs and community centers and such.
Yeah, exactly. Because if we don't build it up, nobody else is going to do it for us, and it won't be long before these things disappear completely. Or even your local minor league baseball teams, or what do you call it? Not intramural. Oh, like you can go sign up and play in a league with your friends over summer. That stuff will all disappear too if people aren't actually out there and taking advantage of it. I think COVID wiped a lot of this stuff out too.
Right.
And it's all kind of in training to isolate us. Yeah, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And push a lot of this individualism on us to the point where it's like you should not even, individualism to the point where it's like the reason you should watch football or soccer or, baseball is just for your own enjoyment, just to get your dopamine receptors going. That is it. That is the reason we have sports. It's like, no, sports is supposed to be to cheer on your community. It's like, it's the same thing with music. Music is not something that should be listened to just for the point of like, oh, I'm going to get my serotonin levels going. No, it should be like, my daughter or my son, my cousin, my friend, they spent thousands of hours trying to learn an instrument, and they learned a song and they perfected it. And now it's the recital, and now it's like the 1 hour they're going to shine. And it all came down to this. That's the reason you're there, not just for yourself, but for your community, for your other, your other half, or for your family member, or for whoever, right? And that is what we need to get back to, is understanding it's for the community, it's for the collective, it's for our nation, it's for God. It's not just about us.
Exactly. That's very, very well put there. And I wonder what it is going to take to get people to snap back to that. Maybe that's why we have this crash coming, where everybody is going to have to rely on their neighbors if we do start having food shortages and other things. So if you don't have those relationships now, then
I'm growing food in my backyard, and I know many others are too. And I'm going to give my neighbor, I'm going to go talk to them, give them a tomato plant tomorrow, I think. So I'm going to force them to start growing food too.
Yeah, well, at this point, it's probably something everybody should be doing. We're advising all our clients to invest in canned food and shotguns.
Exactly. So I think we're just about out of time here, but it was fantastic, as always, doing our live stream. And we'll be here on Thursday with a special guest at 7:30 Eastern time. That's 6:30 Central Time, and 4th is sorry. It's been a long show, obviously, and then 4:30 PST. Special guest Jack Anderson. He's going to be talking about the French election and what the implications of that mean in the West. Macron obviously just won in France. Boo! But that's okay because there might be some uplifting news that we'll get to on Thursday as well. So make sure you join us there, and you can find us on everything at. You can find us on everything at punchingleft.com. Mike, you can take away the rest of this intro. I think I fumbled enough, but make sure you join the Telegram, punchingleft.com.
That's right. We are going to be bringing you guys some more interviews and some other new material, kind of change things up a little bit. But we'll still be here every Tuesday and Thursday. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see everybody again soon.
Take care.